What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down some examples of some good and bad route running. So we're going to be showing bad examples of certain routes and then a good example of a wide receiver doing the exact same route but working it the correct way. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it could teach you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you're a wide receiver and you were struggling this offseason to find out what kind of drills you should be doing on a day-to-day basis for your route running, your press releases, your hands, check out that very first link in the description below for our 8-week wide receiver on-field workout schedule. It's an 8-week daily schedule with specific drills, with sets, reps, and a video example of each drill on how to do it. So check out that very first link below if you're interested, fellas. Let's get started with this video. So now, first things first here, we're going to be looking at this fade route from this wide receiver. Now, this wide receiver gets walled all the way to the sideline, and this is everybody's biggest fear, obviously, against press coverage, is having this happen, getting jammed all the way to the sideline. So let's break this thing down. So the only time that I feel when you come off the ball and this DB jumps to his outside leverage and you force an outside release is if it's an MOR fade. So what is an MOR? It's a must outside release. Some people call it a mandatory outside release. That's where you have to get outside. So usually that's a play where you have a fade route and then maybe the slot wide receiver is running a 5-yard out. We're trying to get this DB to turn his hips towards the sideline so we can hit the 5-yard out. Or he's going to crash on the 5-yard out, and the QB is going to throw you this whole shot fade. Now, if it's not that MOR situation, we do not need to force an outside release on a go route. A lot of people will say that. A lot of people will think that, oh, just because it's a fade, I always got to go outside. There is no difference if you take an inside release and you are able to restack over the top of the DB. So when he comes off the ball, he gives this kind of hesitation release. You see this DB keeps his leverage to the outside or jumps to his leverage to the outside. He is giving us an inside release. So that is what we want to take. The whole purpose of a DB being outside leverage is to prevent the outside release. He doesn't want us to do exactly what we are trying to do here. So as a receiver, I have to be able to react. Everybody's probably heard the Dolphins head coach, like stories of him showing, his wide receivers, basketball film, like Allen Iverson film, like point guards working on different crossover moves. This is where you can kind of put that into effect. You come off the ball, you think maybe a DB's in head-up press. Sometimes he may even be inside shade press, and you're trying to give him a little stutter and go. But he jumps to the outside. We have to be able to put my foot in the ground, just like how a basketball player would, react and take the inside release. So he comes off the ball, kind of forces it. DB gets hands because that is his sole responsibility. Protect that leverage. Try to force everything to the inside to his safety help. So if this wide receiver, and we're going to show an example of this, a correct example of this, would have came off the ball, worked to the outside, put the brakes on maybe right here on this step, and taken an inside release, he would have had a better chance. Because at least we have some space now to try to work to restack and get a step on this DB. But when he forces us all the way to that sideline, even if I get a step on him, that's an impossible throw for that quarterback. There is no space for the QB to fade us open. And that is what we want. We need space for him. We need to run a quarterback-friendly fade route. So let's play this full speed. So again, easy mistake. I don't know if this was an MOR. If it was an MOR, he kind of did his job on this because he took the corner out of the play. But if it's not an MOR, it is completely fine to take an inside release on a fade. So this is a route here from the Super Bowl a couple years ago, and the Chiefs won it. And this is the same situation. This is Sammy Watkins running the exact same fade route versus the exact same type of coverage. Head-up coverage pre-snap, and he jumps to the outside with his release. But Watkins does a great job of putting the brakes on and being able to react. So let's play this full speed. He comes off the ball, DB jumps outside, takes the inside release. It's the same thing, fellas. He ends up in the exact same spot as if he were to take an outside release and restack. What is the difference? All these receiver coaches constantly preach, oh, got to take an outside release, got to take an outside release, outside route, got to take an outside release. But if I end up at the same spot and now I get it more efficiently, I kept timing with my quarterback, what's the difference? Now I get it. Maybe you got a high school coach who's real old school, real picky. He doesn't watch our videos, but he forces you. He's like, you got to go outside. If you don't go outside, you're wrong. I get it. Sometimes you got to make it work. But I'm telling you guys this right now. When it's a four-vert concept and I'm from a quarterback perspective, if I'm trying to throw you the ball downfield on a fade ball, I need space to the sideline. I don't need you coming off the ball like the last example. DB jumps out wide and we try to just force it and he gets hands and carries me all the way to that sideline. That's an impossible throw. I'm probably going to have to put it back shoulder, or I'm probably going to end up putting it out of bounds. I might get lucky, put it on a perfect dime, and that's a 1 out of 30 throw. That quarterback's not a regular high school or youth quarterback can make that throw. And honestly, that's on the wide receiver. We need to do my job and give the QB space. So don't be afraid to react. Don't be afraid to take what the DB gives you. He's playing outside shade for a reason. He's jumping to that outside leverage for a reason. Take away the outside release, force you inside. So let's take what he gives us. Maybe we give a move in the process. We fight the hands. And now I get to an easy restack position. On an inside release fade, fellas, you're probably not going to get the ball if you don't restack him. So we have to make sure that we restack. Now, let's go back to the very beginning of this, or not the beginning, but kind of the beginning of the release. When he makes this move, I want you to see what he does, because we talk a lot about feet, right? Hand technique is also important off the line. Fighting a DB's hands, understanding how to get his hands off of you. But a lot of receiver coaches make it extremely complicated. They're like, you got to swat rip, you got to swat chop, you got to do all these things. And I get it. Those are all viable moves, and if you use those moves, those are not incorrect. But you just got to understand that it's very simple. If you're trying to take an inside release, DB jumps to the outside. The only hand that is preventing you from taking an inside release is his inside hand. So if you just can beat his inside hand and you could swat his hands off, so what if he recovers with his outside hand? You got the inside release and we still have a step on. Because again, the whole purpose of a DB jamming is to disrupt timing with my quarterback. So if I can figure out what hand to beat and keep it simple, move him off the platform with my feet and go, that's how I create separation. And that's how I could set myself up into a restack position or a position to where I could get skinny on a route. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. So great job by Watkins showing us how you can react when it's not an MOR, fellas. Do not be afraid to take an inside release on a fade. Okay, so now this next example here is going to be a bad example of a wide receiver snapping down. Now, I don't want you to pay attention to the result of the play because the result of the play is from the wide receiver not coming back to the ball. That's why this thing ends up being an interception. However, him dropping into the break is what I want us to focus on because it's an easy mistake that wide receivers make when they drop their hips at the top of the route. So let's play at full speed. Wide receiver comes out, he breaks down, but you see how he's got like a big drift forward. That was a very, very not explosive break, very, very slow break. But again, to the untrained eye, if you're just watching this, you're looking like, oh, what was wrong with that? He just snapped down. He had that trigger step. He snapped down. There are more details to just taking a hard step. So I'm sure everybody has heard that phrase before, like you want to have a trigger step. You know, you're running a curl, you're running a comeback, you're running a dig. You want to snap down and be violent with your hips. Whether you've heard that from me or whether you've heard that from maybe another guy. That is correct, but a lot of times guys will do that and they do not have the correct form. So when he drops into this break and he's breaking off of his outside foot here and he's snapping down, I want you to see what happens. There is really not much of a level change with his butt and with his hips. He pretty much stays at the same level with his hips. You can kind of see it. His hips are there and there's maybe a slight drop, but you see what his upper body does. You see how his chest goes way over his knees, his chin is way over his toes. That is a bend at the waist, not a drop at the hips. And that is going to cause you to drift forward on a route. Now, a lot of guys do this because they think that this is how you get low. Maybe they've heard the phrase, you want to try to bring your chin to your knee. You want to drop low. You have to get low. You got to be violent. But you need to be violent here with your hips and drop down. And we're going to show a correct example of Chad Ochocinco doing this exact same thing the correct way. But when you drop down, it's not a bend forward. You are like literally like, I think of it like you have a string attached to your chin and you are pulling that string directly down. You're pulling the string to your knee. You're not pulling the string over your knee. You're pulling the string to your knee because that is what will help you decelerate. Now, you might be thinking, well, he's still getting low. His pad level is still low. Why is this a problem? Because when you guys are running a route, what is the number one thing that we were trying to sell with this DB? We were trying to make him think that we're running a 9, that we were running to the opposite end zone, quarterback's putting this thing over the top. So obviously when you're trying to sell fade, you have a lot of speed into your route. This is why I can't stand it when wide receivers do drills with cones that are 5 yards apart because they're doing all these breaks, they're doing the zigzag, figure eight, all the fancy footwork crap. And that's not realistic because when are you ever going to be doing all that stuff 5 yards apart? Yeah, maybe on a hitch route, but 15 yards downfield is how we run routes, and that's what we need to get better at. So a lot of guys will fall into these bad habits because now when you got some speed into the break, but your mechanics are wrong because you've been doing the wrong type of drills, the wrong type of training, and you break down and you lean too far forward with some speed, you're going to drift. And you see how much he drifts off this thing. He drifts up an extra maybe 2 yards, is up tall, no explosion coming back to the quarterback, and that allows that DB to make an easy interception. So fellas, we have to make sure that I am violent with my hips, number one, but it's not a bend at the waist. I'm not bending forward. I am dropping down. Let's play this again, full speed one more time. So now, next example here from Ocho Cinco, you're going to see what I'm talking about. So he's running the same type of like curl route. But you see how he sits down into the break. He drops his butt at the top of the route. So he's here. There's a level change here. He's not leaning forward. His chin does not go past his knee. It is just a drop of his weight. It is a level change. The way I think of it, the way I tell my wide receivers, think of it like you got somebody throwing something at your head and you have to duck under and you have to sit your butt down. Because when you sit down like this, that is how you slow down when running full speed. Now, we talk about it a lot. Like on your routes, you have to make a DB think what? Got to make them think you're running fade, right? So when I'm running fade, I got to run hard. I got to maintain my stride. I got to keep a good body language. Now, that's much easier said than done. It is hard to drop on a dime like this, like what Ocho Cinco does. It's hard to just put the brakes on and sit down like this and be violent with it and be able to stop right in place. It's a hard thing to do. But again, you have to apply this if you want to be able to go up against a caliber DB like this. Every single DB at the college level, every single DB at a high level of even high school ball is somewhat talented, has been coached, has decent technique. So they're going to be looking for these little details. A lot of guys will run up into a route and they will just slow down, slowly sink their hips, and everything's moving slow. But they're getting low, they're dropping their hips. Don't even get me started on guys who like to beat the drum and chop their feet and have a slow sink of their hips. All of that gives this guy time to react. To be able to decelerate while selling vertical, and selling vertical correctly by actually running hard, running in full stride, you have to do this. You have to sit down. You got to change levels at your hips and at your butt like you're sitting in a chair. That's what I tell my guys. Sit into a chair, because when you sit into a chair and you have some speed, that's how you put the brakes on. That's a violent drop of your hips, and that creates energy. All right, so now, next example I want to talk about here, and this is going to be a bad example of a double move route. So if I'm running a double move, number one things that you have to sell, like let's say it's a slant and go. You have to snap your eyes to the quarterback. You got to commit your hips and your shoulders. And last but not least, you actually have to have some speed. DBs look for a change in speed when running a double move. So let's play this full speed. So let's watch what this wide receiver does. He does this kind of like post out variation, but when he breaks to the post, he is not running hard. That is the problem. So he does everything correct, right? Pre-snap, inside shade, got a little bit of catch technique. We're on the goal line. So he closes the space with him, takes the outside release. He does a really good job of getting skinny, and he gets over the top and stacks. But when he breaks to the post, his arms stop, his pad level kind of raises, and his speed changes. All of those things slowing down is what will let this DB know that he's not running a post. He's not running a dig. He's not running whatever route he's trying to sell. Especially, fellas, if you're running like, let's say, for example, it's a slant and go again, and you got a DB in off coverage, and you're trying to get him to drive on that slant, we cannot change my speed. That is one of the biggest mistakes that guys will make, because the second you slow down, DB is going to slow down. So let's play this full speed, and then we'll show a good example of this. So we can't burst up to the outside and be slow to the post. We have to have speed on my double move. So let's watch this wide receiver. This is a sluggo. This is the example that we were talking about. He bursts up, breaks to the slant, but you see there's no change in speed. If anything, there's an increase to his speed when he breaks to the slant, because that puts the DB on alert. When you run a slant route, you're actually running, right? You're going to take 3 hard steps up. You're going to take 3 hard steps over the middle. You're actually going to run on the slant because it's game speed. You have to get comfortable being able to change direction with that. And that's where doing those game realistic drills do. A lot of wide receivers will go through cone drills, cutting drills. You got the cones 5 yards apart, which is cool, but they're running slow. They're taking choppy steps. They're dragging. They're reaching with their feet. That does not directly translate to an actual route. You have to make sure that your training translates to an actual route, and we can make sure that everything we do is game realistic. So in this situation, to get this DB to crash, I got to actually run. I got to make sure I have some speed, and that is what will get the DB to crash down on this route. All right, fellas, really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like to come out or you would like to get access to one of our 8-week wide receiver on-field workout schedules, check out that very first link in the description below. I'll see you guys next time.